All right, Alexander, it looks like the entire Russiagate hoax, the narrative, we've been calling it a hoax from the get-go. It seems that it's just completely falling apart in absolute spectacular fashion, depressing and disturbing fashion as well, because a lot of frightening revelations are coming to light. But it is completely falling apart. Let's talk about Steele now, and we've covered Steele at great lengths here at the Duran. But the Daily Caller, in the US at least, broke this story, and the title reads, "Exclusive. Dossier author Christopher Steele had previously undisclosed meetings with lawyers for DNC Clinton campaign." Let me read you the first two excerpts, the first three bullet point excerpts. Christopher Steele shed new light on his work for the Clinton campaign, and DNC revealing in testimony last month that he met with two lawyers for the Democrats as part of his investigation into Donald Trump. Steele met with Perkins Coie partners Michael Sussmann and Marc Elias, he testified. And finally, Steele said that Sussmann provided him with the now debunked tip that a Russian bank had a secret communications channel with the Trump organization. Alexander, get into Steele's testimony, which was done, I believe, in London, correct?
Yeah, it was done in London. It was done in court. It was done on oath. So if he is not telling the truth, if he's deliberately lying, he's committing perjury. So let's just bear that in mind. This is sworn evidence given by Steele as a witness in a defamation suit that has been brought against him by a Russian businessman who is spoken of in the dossier. So, we have to take this very, very seriously. And that particular allegation, I'm glad you said that, the whole thing is unraveling fast, because now we see more about how this dossier, which caused so much trouble and was spoken about at so much length for so long, we can see how it was put together. Now, if you remember when it appeared back on the 11th of January 2017, and when it was being promoted by various Democrats, when Adam Schiff was reading large extracts of it into the congressional record, we were all supposed to believe that it was all based on information from insiders within the Russian government who were detailing the workings of a plot. Well, it turns out here we have one important nugget of information of that dossier, which was no such thing. It came from lawyers employed by the DNC. The DNC fed information through their lawyers to Steele, who put it in the dossier. That's how it was. It wasn't Russians. It was two Perkins Coie lawyers who were providing this information. The DNC's own lawyers were doing this, and Steele was writing it into the dossier.
Yeah, they also fed the debunked story about Alpha Bank as well.
No,
that the Trump organization had some connection to Alpha Bank, which is a Russian bank.
That's right. Well, that's right. I mean, and by the way, got the spelling of its name wrong, which is one of the more preposterous aspects of the whole dossier story. But there we are. So we get that particular piece of information. It turns out doesn't come from a Russian source at all, in a document which we were told was provided by Russian sources. It turns out it wasn't. I mean, this particular information comes directly from Perkins Coie, their lawyers, who are working for the DNC. It's a completely circular thing. It's just extraordinary how this is coming out. And, that in itself begs all sorts of questions. Can I just make one observation, one obvious one? I mean, the Steele dossier comes out. People are going around saying the intelligence community, the FBI, are investigating, carrying out, and pretending that they're conducting investigations based on this dossier. Both houses of Congress are carrying out their own investigations based on this dossier. Adam Schiff is reading extracts of the dossier into the congressional record. And what do Perkins Coie do? They know that one of the key allegations in the dossier does not come from a Russian source. It comes from a tip which they have provided. Do they come along and say publicly, well, actually, so as not to mislead anybody, you should know that this information actually came from us? Do they do that? Do they say that? Do they say that in January 2017 when the dossier becomes public? Do they say that when people start querying the fact that supposed Russian sources are misspelling the name of Alpha Bank? No, they don't.
One of
They
the
say
biggest
nothing.
banks in Russia.
Exactly.
And they misspelled it.
Well, I know. They say nothing. We only find out about it because Christopher Steele admits it in sworn evidence before a British court. So I think we ought to ask some very, very hard questions of this particular law firm of Perkins Coie. Why did they allow for 3 years an impression to gain force and to lead to all kinds of investigations, which they knew was not true? They knew it was not true because they were the ones who provided the information behind it.
Yeah, I think they spelled Alpha Bank ALPHA.
That's
Is that
right.
how they spelled it?
That's
that would
right.
be like the UK. That would be like these guys spelling I don't know, Barclays, BARKLEYS. You know?
Correct.
I mean,
Correct.
literally.
Absolutely correct. They spelled the name wrong, and as I said, any Russian would know immediately that it was the wrong spelling. It was one of the things, by the way, I immediately noticed when I read the Steele dossier, because I'm not the world's #1 Russia expert, but I do know how one of the biggest banks in Russia spells its name. I mean, it's like, say, a Citibank and writing CY or instead of CI. I mean, it's that basic. It's that basic.
Yeah,
And this business, by the way, we shouldn't underestimate this business about the secret back channel and all that. Well, it's very big. I mean, people were running with it, and they were running with it. By the way, there were stories appearing in the media about it before the Steele dossier was actually published. I mean, people were giving an awful lot of credence, and we now see that it all originated from Perkins Coie.
and just to take things further, Marc Elias, who was one of the people that was feeding the information to Steele, he is the general counsel for the Hillary Clinton campaign. So, Alexander, we've connected a dot, i.e., Steele is directly connected with the Hillary Clinton campaign. Directly connected.
He is directly connected. Absolutely. Of course he is. And all sorts of extraordinary other things are coming to light because he's now admitted in this same sworn testimony what other people he discussed it with. And he discussed it with Strobe Talbot, who is a former Clinton administration official, very senior Clinton administration official. In fact, the Clinton administration's top official on Russia, and a very close friend of, you guessed it, Hillary Clinton. So he meets with Strobe Talbot, and he meets Strobe Talbot on the recommendation of Victoria Nuland, who is the Assistant Secretary of State at the time for European Affairs in the State Department. She arranges this meeting. And of course, Steele says in this sworn testimony that another person who knew about his dossier was Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor of the President of the United States, who at the time was none other than Barack Obama.
There's your connection to the Obama White House.
So you have connections now, both directly to the Hillary Clinton campaign through Strobe Talbot and Elias. And Elias is a key connector. And you also have senior officials within the Obama administration, including Obama's own national security advisor, named by Steele as people who were familiar with his dossier. You're going to tell me Barack Obama himself didn't know? That Susan Rice, his own national security advisor, didn't tell him about it? Well, if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you.
Yeah. You also have a Loretta Lynch tarmac meeting with Bill Clinton.
Absolutely.
You have Victoria Nuland, Alexander, who was knee deep in Ukraine during the Maidan coup.
Yeah.
You have Joe Biden, who was running Ukraine from 2014 onwards, pretty much as the de facto president of Ukraine. And you have the track, and bear with me as I get to my point here, my question to you. You have the track that's constantly repeated, both from the neoliberal shills at MSNBC, CNN, the Washington Post, as well as Fox News and conservative channels that support Trump, that all of this stuff that was given to Steele was Russian disinformation. Now, we have both have taken dispute to that claim. And we've said many times that this appears to be Ukraine intelligence disinformation that's feeding this stuff. And I come to that conclusion for two reasons. Number one, I see the hand of Victoria Nuland here, and I see the hand of Joe Biden, who has a very close connection to Hillary Clinton, as we saw in their little virtual Women's Day thing that they had the other day, how cozy they are. And we know that Joe Biden was running the show in Ukraine. So it wouldn't be far-fetched to say that Joe Biden, under the orders via Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, was told we need some disinformation fed our way so that we could get rid of this Trump guy. That's number one. And number two, you sent me an article about a week ago where they said it doesn't make any sense that this was Russian disinformation because this is a dossier that paints Trump in a very bad manner. So was this dossier created by the Kremlin in order to support Hillary Clinton by making Trump look like a clown with his antics at the hotel? That doesn't make sense. Or was the Kremlin creating this disinformation in order to help Trump by making him look like a clown at the Radisson Hotel in Moscow? Why? I can't square the logic behind it.
The Russian
one way or another, whether you're helping Hillary Clinton or helping Trump, whichever way they're saying the Kremlin is angling.
I am sure the Russian disinformation story doesn't make any kind of sense. I mean, I want to say this again because, people always come back and say, that I in particular am pro-Russian. The Russians are incredibly tough, ruthless, cynical people. They follow their own interests, but they have more than a couple of brain cells to rub together. Why would they concoct an idiotic dossier like this, one that is so completely incredible anyway, and which damages Donald Trump? I mean, is it being suggested that they wanted to help Hillary Clinton? Well, apparently not. Is it being suggested that, I mean, what is being suggested? None of it makes any kind of sense. And I'm going to say this, and it's a point which you've made several times. I think there's always this great confusion in American minds between Russians and Ukrainians. And I think a lot of this came from Ukraine. And there's something that I wanted to just share, which is that as a result of the revelations of the last couple of days, I've been reading through a lot of the old material on Russiagate. And one of the things I came across was an article that was a huge article that was written in the Washington Post on the 23rd of June, 2017, which discussed at extraordinary length the responses of the Obama administration to what Russia has supposedly been doing. And I found buried in it, I remembered reading this at the time, that a lot of these allegations had supposedly been corroborated by technical assistance provided by a certain country, but the National Security Agency, the NSA, had deep doubts about this and weren't prepared to go along with that. That's in that article from the Washington Post. Now, at the time when I read that, I assumed that was Britain. I now think, if I'm pretty sure, that was Ukraine. That refers to Ukraine because it makes sense if you read the article in its entirety. And you can start putting together a couple of dots now because, of course, Ukraine apparently was providing information that allegedly corroborated the Russian hacking story. At the same time, you have Joe Biden essentially running things in Ukraine. And then, of course, last year, we had this extraordinary telephone conversation between Zelensky and Trump. Well, actually, not so extraordinary. It's a very interesting telephone conversation between Donald Trump and Zelensky, the current president of the Ukraine, in which Trump is asking Zelensky for help with the Russiagate investigation and seems to be referring to some kind of server that was used and is in Ukraine, which is in some way related to the Russian hacking allegations. There's been massive speculation about what that meant. But if you put it all together, it does look as if a lot of the information, the evidence, if you like, for the Russian hacking allegations may have come from Ukraine. And it could be that what actually scared and caused all the shock and alarm and worry was the fact that Trump and Zelensky were talking about this, and that was what scared the intelligence community, and that was why we got the impeachment proceedings going. A bit of speculation here, I think, is well-founded speculation. If it is true, it's a point you made to me. Who was running things in Ukraine at that time? We're talking about 2016, when all this was going on, when the Ukrainians were corroborating the DNC hack. Joe Biden was.
Creepy Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Creepy Joe. Yeah,
Creepy
just a
Joe.
Correction. I said Radisson, the hotel, Ritz-Carlton. I meant the Ritz-Carlton.
Ritz-Carlton Hotel, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, and Biden, as I remember at that time, he was going backwards and forwards to Ukraine all the time.
All the time,
and this is the time frame when he manages to get the Procurator General of Ukraine, Shokin, sacked. So, I mean, it gives you an idea of what a powerful man in terms of Ukrainian politics Biden was, and how close he was to the then Ukrainian government led by the then president Petro Poroshenko. So, Biden is right at the middle of all of this.
I think there's no doubt that we've connected the dots as far as how this information was getting passed along. You sent me a message where you said it's pretty much the heart of all the disinformation seems to be Ukraine.
Mm.
The transmitter seems to be the UK and UK
Yes.
intelligence.
Yes.
And then eventually it would end up with the DNC in the United States. And of course, as we know now, the DNC meaning the FBI, meaning the DOJ, meaning Comey, Brennan, Yates, and all of them. So, I mean, we seem to understand, perhaps we have a better understanding as to how the information was funneled and how it ended up back in the US in order to remove Trump and to damage Trump.
Indeed, sir. Indeed, sir. And bear in mind, of course, Christopher Steele has strong connections with Ukraine. That's not disputed. He was getting Ukrainian information about the conflict there. So he has strong connections with Ukraine. And we know the British were involved because at the same time as all this was happening, in the summer of 2016, we know that the head of GCHQ, which is one of the premier British intelligence agencies, very closely connected to the NSA, was traveling to Washington with information which was apparently used in the Russiagate investigation. So the British were definitely involved, and they were involved in a huge way. And we also know all this from the Papadopoulos affair, which is also going on simultaneously with all of this. But, it seems to me that a lot of this does have its origins in Ukraine. That's how the pieces are starting to fall. And we also see how heavily involved Christopher Steele was with the Democrats. He knew who was employing him. He by the way, it confirms in this testimony, the sworn testimony, that he was aware that he was working for Hillary Clinton and her campaign. I mean, that's no longer disputed. He knew who he was working for. He was having discussions with prominent Democrats, very top-level Democrats, including Stowe Talbot, who was the Democrats' chief Russianist, if you like. And at the same time, he is meeting with top officials of the Obama administration, with Victoria Nuland, and apparently believes or says that Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor of Barack Obama himself, that she was also in the loop too. So it seems incredible, but All the pieces are falling into place. There's lots of digging to do. We've engaged in a certain amount of speculation in this program. We need to say that, but it's very well founded. And I would again say all our speculation on Russiagate and Ukrainegate, by the way, has been proved consistently right. When we do guess, and we always make very informed guesses and identify them as guesses, they turn out to be true. It's quite amazing, actually.
Yeah, I agree. I think the next thing that we've debunked, but we need the information on it, more concrete facts, is the claim that all this Steele disinformation came from Russia. I think it's becoming crystal clear and obvious that this disinformation operation was being run out of Ukraine, because I hear the names Victoria Nuland and Biden.
And Stobe Talbot.
I mean, there's no doubt about it that all this stuff was going from Ukraine to UK to the US.
Absolutely, absolutely. And can I just make a point here, which is, of course, we have Joe Biden, as I said, coming backwards and forwards from Ukraine, sacking prosecutors there, top prosecutors, giving orders to Petro Poroshenko.
You have Chalupa, Alexander Chalupa.
Well, indeed, all of this. But are we really asked to believe that Joe Biden doesn't know that the Ukrainians are corroborating the DNC hack story? I mean, that he's not being informed by the Ukrainians themselves about this, that Poroshenko, who he is talking to all the time, doesn't mention the fact. I mean, that's impossible. I mean, there are some, there's a story from Alice about, believing, I can't remember, these 10 impossible things before breakfast. That is just too impossible to believe, even for me. So, if what we're saying on this program turns out to be true, then of course Biden must have been involved. Up to his ears.
I think Biden was ordered to get the disinformation thing running. Poroshenko reported to Biden. Biden was essentially the de facto president of Ukraine.
Poroshenko was reporting to Biden. Biden was the man who controlled the money. I mean, he was the person who was able to stop the money going to Ukraine.
He admitted it in a video.
He bragged about it. He's openly bragged about it. So Poroshenko reported to Biden, and he would report it to Biden about everything. And Biden, well, who was he reporting to? There's only one man above him.
One man and one woman above him.
One indeed.
Yeah. All right. We got more stuff coming out from Steele, I think, too, by the way.
We got very, very much more. And I mean, this is extraordinary testimony. And it's interesting to see that Steele is finally being asked questions. And he's finally coming up with some very remarkable answers.
God, it's so important.
By the way, I should add one other thing, of course, that what Steele is saying proves that many of the things that Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS, remember him, things that he said to Congress, of course it's perjury to lie to Congress, many of those things weren't true.
I'm just going to close it out, Alexander. We've said it many times. I was just about to say, it's so important for Trump to get reelected, because we are so close to getting the truth about everything, but we're not going to get there until Trump's second term. What would be Trump's second term? If Trump doesn't get reelected, all of this stuff that we're now finding out about is just going to get buried.
Absolutely. I mean, can I just say it will be buried in November, even though Trump will remain president until January. What will happen is that everything will freeze up from November, and then when the new president comes in January, that president will close it all down. So
we're so close. We're so close.
We are so close. The dam is now just about on the brink of bursting. But we still have to get through this election, this very difficult election in November, and the stakes could not be high.
All right. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much, guys. If you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on the notifications bell. smash that like button. Also donate to us on PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribe Star. Your donation helps us out a whole lot. And please go to the Duran shop, pick up some magic mugs, pick up some polo shirts or some cool t-shirts. Alexander, you've got a magic mug right there.
Indeed, I have. And this is now going to be my default mug for a while because I've suddenly decided that I really must make it my default mug. This one has the double-headed eagle of the Duran, which is different from the Russian one. As you can see, it's the same one that you will see on our shirts. And I've spoken many times about our wonderful magic mugs, the best mugs you will find anywhere, beautifully made, wonderful to hold, elegant, glorious to look at, by the way, when you see them. When you see them in the flesh, they're just amazing to see because they're so elegantly made and they've got such beautiful sheen to them. And of course, they're incredibly hard wearing. I've had this mug, it's my oldest mug, and I've had it for 18 months now, and it's in perfect condition, not a chip or a crack or a piece of discoloration anywhere. But these aren't just beautiful to hold and see, they keep your coffee or your tea, if you drink tea like me, absolutely perfect, beautifully hot for all the time that you need in order to drink it. And there's a lot of space there for a lot of tea and coffee. So they are the best mugs you could possibly have. And our viewers who've bought them all agree. The feedback we're getting on them is tremendous. And it's not just our mugs you will find in our shop, you will find our shirts too. We have our amazing polo shirts. Today I'm dressed in one of our t-shirts. All our shirts are 100% cotton. They're all beautifully made. They're incredibly comfortable. They are extraordinarily hard wearing. And they all have, as you can see, the double-headed eagle of the Duran. And we have polo shirts, we have long-sleeved and short-sleeved t-shirts, we've got V-neck shirts, we've also got hats, hoodies, and stickers, all of the same amazing quality. We've got books on topics like Russiagate, which is what we've been talking about on this program. And you can see, if you go to that book, that we have all our guesses, all are very informed and properly, argued through guesses. They're not really guesses at all. They're assessments, analysis, if you like, has turned out to be exactly right. You see that from our book on Russiagate. You see that also from our book on Ukrainegate. And we've also done brilliant books on topics like Brexit, on the Epstein affair, and of course, on the latest oil price crash. So you got all these wonderful things in the Duran shop. You support us by buying these great things. You will be incredibly happy when you own them. So don't hold back. Come to our shop, support the Duran. Alex will tell you how.
Just go to theduranshop.com. You'll find a link in the description box down below. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.